The next day of my short trip in Czechia, or more precisely in South Bohemia, the south of the country, I went to visit another town in the region, Český Krumlov. It is just around 25 minutes of drive from Lipno, the resort where I stayed with my friends for 3 days, and just about at the same distance from Cesky Krumlov you saw in my previous video. Yesterday, driving to Cesky Krumlov, I just took a glimpse on it from afar, and even from the route it seemed gorgeous, so I couldn't miss to visit it, and I don't regret I came here at all. Another old town with narrow cobblestone streets that I like so much. As you see, the entire look of Český Krumlov is truly medieval, and it seemed to me as I have been back in those ancient times, much more than I felt it in the other places I visited in the region. And there were much more tourists than yesterday in Cesky Krumlov. Probably it's because precisely of that old fairy tale look of Český Krumlov, where the ambience in the streets was very joyful and colorful, regardless of the grey sky and the drizzles that continue to drop from time to time. Of course, being a touristic town, it was full of souvenir shops. You can't hide away from the small fridge magnets. I bought 2 of them too, as a beautiful mug. And of course of tiny and cozy traditional restaurants, but also pizzerias, cafes, bars, more expensive hotels, cheaper hostels, and so on. But it's not just that the town is looking medieval. It actually is medieval. Most of the houses you see are built in the 16th and the 17th century. They are preserved in a magnificent way and are inhabited even today. I wondered how the architects, the urbanists and the construction workers of the city managed to resolve the issue with the heating in the winter without damaging the houses, but they certainly have found a way. Anyway, if you pay attention wandering in the streets, you can find many amazing architectural details on the doors, on the walls and even on the wooden window frames. Because Český Krumlov is set up on the meanders of the Vltava river, there are several bridges decorated with statues that crosses the different parts of the town and offers attractive views. And here was an older man that played a hurdy-gurdy, dressed in a uniform like of a Czech soldier from the beginning of the 20th century, recalling the character of Švejk from the satirical novel of the Czech author Jaroslav Hašek. It seems that this man really enjoys to play that hurdy-gurdy. Because the city is on the banks of the river, some of the streets are really steep and it is not a joke to climb them trying to capture everything, although it is impossible to really capture everything. There are so many things to see and your eyes are captured by so many details that sometimes you start to confuse them and you don't always tell right away that you have already crossed that street. Here I came to a monastery of Saint Vitus in Český Krumlov and took a look to the monasterial church. I like to look at these stunning wood carvings and statues with which they are adorned. I have always been amazed at the skill of these craftsmen who created such beauty by hand. I took also a glimpse on the courtyards of the monastery before returning to the street and to continue roaming along the town to absorb the atmosphere of Český Krumlov. The town is not big at all, but at several times I felt as I was lost in a labyrinth, and it was a great feeling. You know, sometimes you have to get lost to unwind completely. Anyway, at some point I reached the main square of the town, the Svonosti Square, where was an Easter market with quite a few stalls featuring various types of handworks from mainly local craftsmen. Baskets from rattan or cane, wood-carved cutlery, home decorations for Easter, totes, bags, bells, metal figurines and pendants, scarves, blankets and tablecloths, leather bags, glass jugs and vases, wallets and belts, clothing, everything made by hand. In the middle of the square there is a fountain with sculptures, and it revealed that it was another plague column from the beginning of the 18th century. The fountain was built on the place of an older one that was demolished back then because of its bad condition, but keeping the same octagonal shape. And this pigeon was too shy and didn't want to be captured by the camera. I liked the ambience of this market with all these people around. There was even an old-fashioned, vintage-looking carousel for the kids and, of course, plenty of food stands where you could get something to eat at the many tables all around. But as it was already late afternoon, I had to move on to be able to see everything I could in this charming town. Something I found interesting is that some of the houses were skillfully painted from the outside. This one, for example. At the beginning, I thought that it is made of rectangular stones, and it appeared that the stones were painted on the walls. It's probably a good sample of 3D painting from the past. And in this red house you can find a restaurant established in 1592. At least that's what the inscription on this plaque says. Can you imagine to take a lunch or a dinner in a 520 years old restaurant? And just next to it there is another bridge from which you can find an old watermill, probably no longer working, but still attractive to see. At this point, I desperately needed a coffee, and after a short break, I continued the tour of Český Krumlov to reach the castle of this old town. And I wanted to visit it because it was the oldest building around. And here it is, the Český Krumlov Castle. It was founded shortly before 1250, which is around 12 years before the foundation of the capital of South Bohemia, České Budějovice. In fact, the entire town of Český Krumlov gets its name from the castle. The first written mention of Český Krumlov was in a deed from 1253. The town was established in two stages. The first part, called Latran, was built below the castle, settled mostly by people who had some administrative connection with the castle. The second part was subsequently founded as another settlement. A bit later, in the 14th century, the castle was enlarged. The town achieved the highest prosperity in the 15th century, when the estate territory was considerably enlarged and the two back then villages were unified in 1555. Around the same period, the castle was again rebuilt in the Renaissance style, while most of the fortifications stayed until 19th century, when they were considered unnecessary and a big part of them were demolished. Here you can see again the painted walls that could be one of the symbols of the entire town. And here is a stone bridge decorated with some statues that revealed to have some premises above it or some kind of covered passage that connects two of the places and also with the gardens of the castle. Here is part of the fortification walls with a watchtower and a defensive platform with a view over the old town of Český Krumlov. You can see in front of the door another sundial as the one you saw in the beginning at the gate of the town. It seems that these sundials are common at least in South Bohemia as in Austria, but it's not a big surprise because over the centuries all these areas had a common history and the population had close contacts. From here, the alley continues to the gardens, but it was already late and they were closed. So I made it to the end of the alley where were some premises and I had to return because it started to rain again. On my way back, these two ducks kept me company for a while. Here is another defensive platform on the other side, just in front of the one you saw, with a view over the today part of the town. Man, these birds are loving me today. It revealed that the castle of Český Krumlov is one of the largest in Central Europe, formed by 40 buildings and palaces, situated around 5 castle courts and a castle park. It preserves its Baroque theatre, built in 1680, 1682 and renovated in 1765-1766. It is the oldest of the 4 theatres from the 18th century in the world that have preserved scenery, props and stage machinery. The equipment of the theatre is protected as a national cultural monument, while since 1992 the entire castle has been designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Time to leave Český Krumlov. You can see the sundial up on the gate.